All right, let's see. All right, we're recording. We're good.
Great. Well, happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this beautiful sunny day here in Boston. Um, I love this meeting specifically, all the meetings I have throughout the year, because this means you are about to board on your plane. This meeting also is co-hosted among other offices. In addition to the Cronin Office of International Education, I'm joined from colleagues across campus, including the Equal Opportunity and Institutional Equity Office, the Student Development, Conduct and Care Office, and my colleague Megan from the Counseling Center. To get us started, I would love to have my colleagues quickly introduce themselves, and we probably can just go by the order of the pictures. Kelly, let's get started with you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Downs, and I'm the Director of the Office of Institutional Equity, and I also serve as the Title IX Coordinator for Bentley University.
Hi, folks. My name is Liz Cassane. I was recently married, and so Liz Humphreys is my former name, and so you might recognize that, but Liz Cassane, and I'm the Director of Student Development, Conduct, and Care on campus. Nice to be with you all.
Sandone Chiodini, I had the pleasure of working with most of you throughout the year to lead us up to this meeting. So thank you again for coming today. Megan, over to you.
I am Megan Van Kuren, and I am the Associate Director in the Counseling Center.
And hello, everyone. I'm Charlie. I'm the Assistant Director in the Study Abroad Office, working with Sandone on faculty-led programs and also incoming exchange. I'm chuckling a little to myself. I didn't notice the headshot. It's somehow one of my acting headshots got on here, so that's why it looks a little different than one of the link, what should have been on my LinkedIn.
And I am so happy that Charlie was promoted to Assistant Director to focus with me on faculty-led. I think each of you understand, faculty members, that it takes a village to run this program. So I'm very happy to have Charlie's support from now on. Joe, we will start now with some introductions. We have the list of courses up, and you're first. If you could quickly introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Joel Dykman. I'm in the Global Studies Department, and I will be co-leading with Sandone the inaugural course on global tourism and sustainability in Panama in January. Nice to see everyone.
Thank you. Professor Matra.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lincoln Matra. I'm in the CIS department here at Bentley, and I am co-leading a study abroad, faculty-led study abroad this winter to parts of Southeast Asia. There are Vietnam, Singapore, and Malaysia, and we are looking at the impact of artificial intelligence in those regions.
Should I introduce myself, Sandone?
Yes, of course.
Rachel Delfino, previously Rachel Dobrinsky, you might know me as, co-leading with Lincoln to Southeast Asia. I'm an assistant director in international education. I work with our Asian portfolio.
Thank you. Over to Bill Gribbins.
Hi, I'm Bill Gribbins. I'm a professor in the Experience Design department, and co-leading with Susan the trip to Japan.
And I'm Susan Broman, working with Bill, going to Japan for the second time. Our focus is going to be on how traditionalisms and culture infuse and feed into modern practices.
Thank you, Susan. Professor Salimbini.
Yes, hi, I'm Franklin Salimbini, Law Department, leading a trip to London for the 35th, or I don't know how many times. My co-leader is my colleague in the Law Department, Liz Brown.
And we are excited to be holding Franklin's bags for this trip.
They're light.
And I can quickly just, or maybe Charlie, why don't you talk about the course to Brazil with Professor De Mello?
Well, yes. So standing in for Rodrigo. So we will also be traveling to Brazil over spring break to the island of Florianopolis, learning about management customs in Brazil. I am absolutely thrilled to be returning there to a new area of the country.
Thank you. Thank you all. To get us started, we have a few things to cover today. Money and health insurance to get us started. So I have worked the past few days with Barbara McLean and her team in procurement, and they are aware of your upcoming trip, including the one in the spring break, which we are still some time away, but they have the records of your trip, the number of students, and the location where you will be traveling. The cash withdrawals, they have been increased to up to $5,000, and they become active 2 days before your trip, and they are still active 2 days after your trip. Co-leader withdrawal limit is $2,500. Single purchase limit for the cards are 10K, and the billing cycle, meaning for the time that you are abroad, if you reach expenses beyond $25,000, the card probably won't work anymore. I have experienced myself traveling abroad with the Bentley's corporate card, and I also had experienced that the card didn't work, even though our team has done everything in place to let them know, let the Chase Bank know that we are traveling. So if that is an issue, I have sent an email this morning with phone numbers. I would encourage you to call them, make sure that you have a PIN set up. And most importantly, one of the things that I do is I set up a text message system with Chase directly. So when I am in that store and the card gets declined, I immediately get a text, and that usually says, this is a fraudulent transaction. Click here to confirm that's you. And at that 1 or 2 minutes transaction, sometimes I can confirm, I get a confirmation, they can run the card again, it works. So that's something also you may want to do on your platform. You have to just log into the Chase website, enter your credit card information, then you can set up the PIN number and add your phone number for notifications. If you don't find that link online, I can send you via email. The students, they have been all enrolled in the health insurance, the CISI. They have been given a copy of the policy, and they have been enrolled on November 11 by our office. That means on that day, they received emails from CISI. A reminder again, as part of the email I sent out this morning, is that if the student needs attention, anyone can open a health insurance claim while abroad, whether that's a colleague, another classmate, or a faculty member or the co-leader. Anyone can pick up the phone and call that number and open a case on behalf of the student. That also means that you probably won't be need to pay out-of-pocket expenses, because if that happens, we have to process reimbursements, and that's usually something that, if we can avoid, we would like to avoid. Most recently, I think last year, Bentley transitioned to a new health insurance. So this is different from what you folks have been using abroad. If you have been abroad before with students or traveling yourself, we moved from United Healthcare to Zurich. So I encourage you to review again the PDF that I sent this morning. It's in your email, and perhaps even print the one page that was attached to my email. So you have it also as a printed version. And again, this is different from what students have. So faculty and staff, we use Zurich. Students use CISI, not to get confused. If you are in certain medications, if you have preconditions, also a good tip is to call the insurance and discuss that if you need medical attention, if you need certainly a medication review, how would that work, what's covered and what's not covered. So I think being proactive and understand before you go abroad, that is also something that I would encourage you to do. The Bentley Safe, I think about 3 weeks ago, we all received an email about this app. I decided to add this on today's information session because some students may be using this app while abroad. They may be telling you about the app and you may not remember that this app was implemented most recently. And as you can see, this is a screenshot of some of the things on the app. So you can connect directly both faculty, staff, and students with the university on the chat. One of the features that the students may be using with each other, I'm not sure, but you can even suggest that, is the friend walk. So students can decide who they want to share their location with through the Bentley Safe app. I think that is something really cool if they are on a free time and they are exploring a part of the agenda that is open and you don't really know, you can't control where they are heading to. So I think that's something also that they, I would highly suggest that you share this with them, or even comment, maybe they already use the app, or just to make them aware of it.
All right, wonderful. Yep. So now, as we're starting to gear up for the winter break, and a lot of our trips are going to be heading out, it's kind of crazy to think, just a couple of weeks here. One of the couple of things we want you to think about. So in the week of travel, and of course leading up to travel, of course, please review all of your flight statuses, any other travel alerts from the U.S. government. A good example of an emerging situation that our office is keeping an eye on over the past couple of days was the situation in South Korea. Obviously no one can predict things like that, but just something to be aware of if something like that were to pop up in your destination country. We want you to review your mobile phone international coverage. That should be, easy peasy for most everybody, to flip on your international plan, but just to make sure that everything works and you don't have any pressing questions, nothing's going to pop up last minute. Definitely consider withdrawing cash, especially for trips that are going to multiple countries. Reviewing students' dietary restrictions, good example of this, last spring, Franklin and we had a couple of students with dietary restrictions. At the end of the day, these students have made it a very long time in their lives, successfully, but it is important to have that conversation with them, especially if they, for example, don't eat meat and are traveling to a country where that's very common, or if they have particularly any risks of contamination. For example, if they have celiac disease, just to make sure that they have a plan, that they have things like EpiPens, because after all, as long as that conversation is had with the students, we just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. And then finally, old school traveling, we definitely recommend having all of your immediate contacts, flight references, health insurance, all of that printed out and on you as a person. As we all know, sometimes our technology fails, and it's just, it's good to have that literally in the back pocket if you need it. Okay. But primarily what we're going to be talking about today are the different situations that can emerge on your trips. If you've led trips before, you might recognize some of these, know them all too well, but we're going to walk through how we're going about these at the moment and things you should be prepared for, including culture shock, student withdrawal, emergency situations, how we're defining those situations in the first place, general crisis management, psychological and psychiatric emergencies, and of course, documenting all these incidents as we go along.
Culture shock is something that can happen to even the most avid travelers. It happened to me most recently when I went to Nigeria, even though I had traveled to other countries in Africa. And I think as an experienced traveler, or if this is your first time taking students abroad, one of the indicators that you can sort of a moment to use to read the room, how is it going with the students, is the reflection time, which most of you are doing daily at the end of the day over lunch. I think those are an organic way to learn how are the students going, how are they coping with the different situations they're facing every day, the different things they're seeing and the folks that they're meeting. Some people is more natural, they adapt quickly. Others might be the first time leaving New England. So you may have all types of travelers in your group. A few resources that we are adding to this slide is the free personality test and also the strength finders. Most of our students already have done the strength finders. Perhaps that's something that you can incorporate in one of your pre-departure sessions to go over as an exercise on campus, to learn about what triggers them to be uncomfortable and what are some of their passions when they are abroad, in addition, of course, to be there because they chose to be enrolled in your course. This is a graph used for most folks when they leave their environment, their house. Some of you already have seen this before. I think for a faculty-led course, that is not really too much of an initial adjustment, and then life becomes routine because everything is going to be new every day, and 6-7 days later you're flying home. So students are basically experiencing and taking in every day as a new experience every single day of the course. I also think about Lincoln's course. You're going to be going to Singapore for a few days, and then one student are like, all right, I got this. They fly to Vietnam, which is a totally new, different environment, and a few days later to Malaysia. So there will be cultural shock happening throughout the day, through the trip, and in between the different countries that you'll be traveling. So I'm looking forward when you come back, Lincoln, what kind of feedback you have, both you and Rachel, on this trip. I think for Susan leaving the United States, who has a diverse population, Japan is very homogenic. I think students will be thinking about that the whole time when they are out there, and so on. Voluntary withdrawal. While I haven't seen this in the past 2 years, it can happen. And students can withdraw for a variety of reasons. There can also be an emergency in their family and they have to return home. But we have a system in place that provides you as a faculty leader and us ways to talk to the students and be based back again in, students pay for this. It's not part of their tuition. So money is involved, logistics are involved. But if a student comes forward and tells you that I can't stay here, I have to go home, I think the first step is to have a meeting between us. I think involving us from the Cronin office and understanding exactly why the student is withdrawing. Is this maybe just a situation that he can think overnight, or is that something that has been adding up since they landed in the country? I think that conversation needs to happen before the student suddenly just packs and leaves. For emergency situations, family themselves, we would work with you as a faculty leader to see how the student could present the deliverables for their course to not be penalized. So I think there will be some flexibility from both our side and your side to adapt to the students and make sure that they get the support from Bentley to successfully conclude the course.
If I could also just add there, Sandine, too, about student withdrawal. Like Sandine mentioned, hopefully this isn't coming out of the blue. Hopefully there's some other kind of indicator that has led the student to this decision, but that's a part of the importance of the faculty and co-leader pairing, is that obviously, not everyone can be everywhere in all places at all times, but hopefully by working together to keep an eye on the students, you kind of have you have your finger on the, what's the expression I'm looking for? You kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's going on, and that way you can hopefully get a little bit of an advance warning so that we prevent something like this from happening.
And I can give you a quick example that happened actually this week. There was one student on a course that kind of went dark. No communication, he didn't join the WhatsApp group, and he missed the pre-departure session. So I took the liberty of calling him directly, and I said, hey, you missed this, you missed the meeting, and you're being quiet, what's going on? Oh, I didn't get a scholarship and I'm missing $2,500 and I can't do this. And I said, okay, great, come to my office, let's talk about this, and let me give you a breakdown of the cost and help you understand what are some of the options for you to pay. So we decided to sit down for an hour. I said, look, if you decide to withdraw now, you're gonna lose about $1,500 because you're flying out like in 3 weeks from now, basically. You are just missing basically less than 50% of the course fee. Here are some financing options. Go to financial aid, explore some loans. And by the way, you're graduating in May. Do you have a job? He's like, well, I could technically save up and also use my sign-up bonus in May. I said, so that's all the things that we should be talking about to make sure that the student understand what resources, because sometimes they make decisions themselves. They don't talk to anyone. And in that case, that student technically saved money and he's still going on the trip. So that's just a quick example that happened to me this past week.
And it's also important to note how exactly we're defining an emergency, because logistical changes, flights get delayed, canceled, you're running after trains, those things do happen. But when we refer to an emergency, we're primarily referring to anything that could threaten the physical or mental well-being of a student. So notice most of these physical assault, again, all this, heaven forbid, but these are what we want to deal with primarily. Crimes committed by a student or to a student, hospitalization, but also, of course, psychological crises, emotional crises. These things do happen. So as long as we are all on the same page about, and we're going to talk about the steps to take when these situations do arise, we can make sure that you feel fully prepared to deal with these as they arise. Because part of the role for faculty and co-leaders is, of course, to be on call 24/7 throughout the duration of the trip. These students, while they're on the trip, you are, for all intents and purposes, we know they're adults, but we are kind of functioning like they're parents in these situations, and we're always going to be the first point of contact in the country. So whatever is going on, obviously the first priority at all times is making sure that the students in the immediate situation are safe. One phrase we like to use is stay with the problem until it is no longer a problem anymore, and then we can deal with the logistics afterwards. So as a situation is going on, our office, the Cronin Office of International Education, we are always, whether we are on the trip as co-leaders or we are in the office, or even if we're home, a call to the police can always get through to us 24/7. And it's just important to keep us updated if one of these situations were to arise. All we ask in the situation, as you're assuring the safety of the student, is that everything is documented, just like any tough situation you might have with a student in the classroom. It's always best just to have records, have a journal, save emails, take notes, etc., whatever, and then we can use that to sort things out afterwards. But again, we want to make sure that the students in the moment are safe. And again, faculty and co-leaders are to be available 24/7. So a good example of this, 2 years ago, I was with Professor Choi with students in France, and we basically had nightly shifts where we had, one of us was the on-call person for the night. Of course, we could contact each other if we needed to, but we had that arranged ahead of time, so that, if one person needed, let's say, extra sleep, for example, heaven forbid a student were to need us in the small hours, they could reach us at any given time. It's also important why all of us are going to be carrying an international plan on a cell phone. WhatsApp is wonderful, but if push comes to shove, we need to also be able to reach your direct phone number at any given time. But a couple of things just to keep on hand with the students, because after all, this is a learning experience for them as well. Just some very boilerplate measures, discouraging students from talking about politics loudly. As we know, in the world, there's a lot going on regarding the consequences of the United States election, and it's the same thing you would do if you were a tourist, to avoid unnecessary attention. But it's also, again, because it's a learning experience, we want to empower students to start that awareness as well. Like right now, they're going home, they're going to have some free time. For example, for the students going to Japan, it is, for many intents and purposes, an alien world to a lot of students, especially those that have never left the United States. Now is the time to do their background reading on the locations they'll be visiting, what to expect, the travel tips for tourists in the areas. It's a great way to start building that ownership even before they get on the plane. But then, of course, whomever your co-leader happens to be, I know we have most of the co-leaders on this call, that communication between the faculty leader and the co-leader should be very clear about expectations of who's taking charge. Again, Franklin, I hope you don't mind me using us as an example, but one of the things we would do is, as we were moving through the city, Franklin's leading the group. Like, all right, Charlie, I'm leading the pack. We're getting to this next destination. I would be in charge. I'd be at the back of the group, making sure we have our 12 heads all got onto the train. Great, we're going. The clearer the expectations are, the smoother everything goes, and also the better understanding of, let's say, not everyone gets onto the train, what's going to happen? Where are you going to meet that student? Are you getting off at the next station? Just having that set ahead of time is going to save a lot of trouble in the long run. But then, of course, having a contingency plan, should anything go wrong, we want to make sure that you're aware of where the nearest U.S. consulate is, and that you have a handy list of important contacts, including our office, of course. We want to make sure that we're on hand to provide the remote assistance we can, but of course, being there on the ground, we want to know what is available in the moment for you.
Thank you, Charlie. Megan, over to you.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about if there are more like psychological or mental health emergencies or situations on the trip. So I think if you have a student showing signs of distress, obviously, first thing we want you to do is sort of check in with them, offer some support, see what the situation is. Take a minute to sort of figure out, is this something that's happening sort of immediate as a result of the trip? Is it something that's been going on before? Getting a little history around the situation. And then really sitting with the student to kind of think about, like, how have they coped with things like this before? What does this look like for them? Do they have sources of support either on the trip or at home that they can access for this sort of thing? New this year, which I think is really helpful, is that our 24/7 support line called Protocol is available for you all, even when you're abroad. So you can either access that by calling the number of the counseling center in our office and following the prompts, or there is also this direct line that we've been able to give you all. So it may be helpful to also add this to your phone and your contacts in the off chance that you do have a student who really needs some support and needs to talk to a clinician. It's not Bentley clinicians that answers the phone, but it is people where we will get a report if there is a student or a faculty that have called this number. You can have the student call directly on their own. You can also call yourself and sort of say, hey, here's the situation I'm in. Do you have some advice, or what should we do with this situation? So I think it could be a great resource if you guys find yourself in that sort of situation. Obviously, if there are extreme circumstances where you're worried about the person's safety, or they're having such a severe panic attack that they can't breathe or something along those lines, obviously you're going to follow sort of the more emergent protocol, emergency room or whatever sort of the emergency resources are where you are, kind of on the previous slides that we discussed. But I think probably the majority of the time in a situation that you're in, it would be really sort of de-escalating the student on your own, how they coped previously, finding support, and then using that support line if for some reason you feel like you need additional resources for that student. And then I did just want to put our graphic in here so that if you are abroad and it's not necessarily an emergency, but the person might need some resources when they get back home, this graphic's on our website, and it just sort of gives a sense of what we offer services-wise, so that when they do come back to campus, they can access us, whatever they might need. The other thing to consider is if you haven't done the Cognito mental health training, we do have that on our website, and it's all about how do you sit with a student in distress? What are the questions that you ask? How do you help that student manage? So it's a short training, and it's really helpful just kind of, reviewing everything before you go, and some helpful tips if you are sitting with students who are, just sort of concerned or having some mental health concerns. The other thing to consider, which I know Liz will get into later, so I'm not gonna talk too much about, is if you're dealing with a psychological emergency, or even someone who's just in distress on the trip for mental health reasons, you can consider a care referral either in that moment or when you return, just so that people on campus at Bentley can be aware and can follow up with that student after the trip if there are things that we could be helpful with, or just sort of checking in, making sure they're doing okay. So another thing to think about, if you find yourself in a situation where a student has really needed a lot of support or has had to access the after hours line, things like that, that would be a helpful way to kind of let the rest of Bentley know that student has struggled.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Megan. I love having you on the call, because a while ago we had a situation involving something around this, and it was difficult to deal with it at the moment. And now that I see the slides, and I know you and I already talked about this as well, I think we have more resources than, and also this call for faculty, which wasn't something we have done in the past.
Yeah,
So
I think it's a great addition. And again, hopefully no one has to use it, but it's in one of those where if you feel like we can't offer enough support, I think it's a great resource. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Sending students home. So a few of the things we talked about here today, we hope never happen, but I think we need to just talk over it between us if it becomes something that you need to face. And one of them is sending students home. I will be following up with all you faculty members directly and CC the co-leaders, but we do have some forms that you can use to either register what has been happening up to leading the moment to send the student home, as well as a form to keep it more formal. But there might be situations that the students is not following your direct feedback. If there is an issue in the beginning of the trip and you are having a meeting with them and they are not improving, there might be a moment that you need to send them home. I think our students in general, our sense is that they understand that they need to follow your directions. We talk about them representing Bentley University and being a United States citizen abroad. And I think they take that very seriously. But there might be things that, again, people change, and we keep admitting new students who may come from different experiences, and this may happen when they are abroad. Trauma or something can happen, specifically when you think about an emotional crisis. Other things that also may happen is if a student suddenly becomes really sick and they just can't improve abroad, and the best advice is for them to continue treatment home. Psychological breakdown also, and being fitness to travel. I think this is interesting because we do, and you faculty as well mentioned this to students, an expectation that they will be walking X miles every day. But if that would be to affect the student throughout the trip, again, is sending home the best way, or is there a way that they can adapt and there is an alternative method of transportation for the locations that you're taking them? So I think, again, sending students home is probably a very aggressive way to fix it. But hopefully, if that is the only way, you have explored with us and with the other folks on this team that this is the only decision you can make. I think specifically when we think about being inappropriate, and Kelly will talk about Title IX, if there is an issue between the students, that can be resolved and so on. Another thing I will be sending over to you is a form to help you document the incident, such as timestamps, who are the folks you've been talking to. If you take the student to the doctor, what is the doctor's name? Just to keep some basic track of what's happening, when and where, and who are you talking to. All of this is helpful for when you return from the trip. So I haven't sent that form yet, because if you just get it, you'll be like, I don't know what this is about. So I'm providing you background of some of the forms. I will be following up with you later via email. Liz, this one is for you.
Thank you so much. And I will reiterate some of what Sandhya shared through just tips and helpful pieces of what to document, the depth that is helpful to go into so that ultimately context is as developed as it can be. A couple things that I just wanted to highlight for folks to make sure that it's clear and that folks are aware. So the student handbook applies at all times to undergrad and grad students. That's on campus, that's off campus, and Waltham. That is also off campus in a study abroad capacity. So language-wise, these are things that you are welcome to reference or use in conversation if it's helpful. But ultimately that expectations in terms of behavior and requests that you all as the faculty and staff leaders make do need to be followed and respected, both from a place of respect, but also from a safety, risk management, kind of holistic lens. So what I put on this slide, the QR code that's on there, which it might be cut off on the bottom, The QR code on this one is a link directly to the student handbook. On page 69 is where you'll see this exact policy. So in our general policies within the handbook, it's everything from, again, like underage alcohol to an off-campus study abroad violation. And so the definitions hopefully will be helpful in terms of matching up. What is the behavior? What is the concern of the student that you are witnessing? Does it meet or does it match one of Bentley's policies? And ultimately, that's when we receive any kind of student conduct report, that's how we look at, again, what's written and match it with what is expected within our policies that are communicated to students. On this next one here, so again, I'll reiterate to Sandene's point, writing and kind of documenting what is going on in the moment is usually the most helpful, just because there's a lot going on. Could be a lot of other people between other students, other folks, locally to where you are. Giving yourself the grace of knowing it's okay to type it out in your phone or somewhere else, even if it doesn't make sense in that moment, but just to give yourself words or bullet points that will help even later on that day kind of develop a formal report. Send that on to Sandene. And then from there, he'll reach out and he and I will be able to connect and then again, look at the report and then move forward. Any formal report that meets the policy requirements through the conduct system. And then there are two different processes that result in a conduct process when an incident is received. Both Lincoln and Sandene actually sit on our student conduct board as members, and so that's one of the processes. Not every incident, of course, goes through a student conduct board. And so if there is concern that you are worried, like, is this enough? Is this worthwhile to send on for a student to be followed up with? Please don't feel like you have to answer that. Send it along, and then we'll be able to put eyes on it and see, is this a quick follow-up conversation to course correct? Is this something that should be more formally documented? Is this actually something that we should reroute through our care team because something's going on, but it's really, we need to get to what is the underlying thing that is resulting in that student maybe exhibiting that behavior or that lack of behavior. The goal in the moment, very, very similar to what Megan said in terms of a student in distress with a mental health or an emotional concern. Same thing. Emotion for any human being is something that goes on a roller coaster of sorts in any scenario that can be tough. We know that when a student or a person, not a student, a human being experiences some form of a trauma, no matter what that is, maybe it's big to them, but small to the next person, some form of a trauma, often a typical response is atypical to what we would expect. It could again be something that needs some more discussion, but in that moment, the goal is to de-escalate, provide support, you kind of gather whatever information you can, and ultimately, what is it that the student could benefit from in that moment, even if it is some potential tough love. As another way to kind of reinforce some of the language here and just word choice that might be helpful. If you have not yet had the chance to take our Campus Safety Authority training, CSA training, which some folks on here per your everyday roles are designated as CSAs, and so you've likely completed it. If not, please feel free, it's open to the public. And so it's 15 minutes in total, it's not a long video, but we'll reinforce again what we talked about previously with things like crimes that need to be reported if it involves one of our students. But that hopefully again will be helpful, and that QR code will go directly to the CSA training site.
Thank you, Liz. And one of the things also we do is when we receive the list of students that have enrolled in your course, we share that with the conduct system. They check if there are any ongoing cases, if there is a record. And if there is a record or if there is an ongoing case, we have the authority to pull them from the course. So as of now, the list of students that you have is clear, but should a case come forward, specifically if we're thinking about the courses that take place in March, for example, we could technically pull the student out in February and tell you and said, sorry, this is an ongoing case. The student has no more the right to go abroad. So just to keep you informed of the processes that happen behind as well. Thank you so much.
That's actually
Lynn.
really helpful context, Sandine. Thank you for sharing that. Students are also aware of this. When they apply to the program, they authorize and indicate essentially study abroad, please ask student conduct for my conduct record so that you can see it. So it's not a surprise that students know that they've asked Sandine's team to reach out to me and my team, and that we have sent ultimately the same information that a student can view on their own student conduct portal. It would include any kind of like date time of a policy violation, a finding, and any sanctions that might be issued. The likelihood of some student having been through the conduct system who's on your trip is somewhat high. It doesn't mean that just because a student may have been through the conduct system previously, that it discounts them actively in that moment from being eligible to participate in the program and the trip.
Great, thank you, Liz.
The last piece that I will speak to briefly, so Megan referenced the care team. Both Megan and I sit on the care team actually with all of these lovely, beautiful faces that you see on the slide. The care team, as you hopefully likely know, is made up very intentionally of a group of diverse and well-rounded staff members from academic affairs and student affairs. The care team is not in place to respond to like in that immediate moment. There is an active crisis or concern for safety with a student on this campus. The care team is not the answer. Here at Bentley's campus, that would be university police. The same, I would say, applies. And so also adding in the time difference depending upon where each of the respective courses are traveling to. If it is a concern, like we mentioned, that you just want to let Bentley know you've mitigated it, there's a plan in place, the student is feeling good, you're feeling good, but it could make sense to let Bentley know so that once, you know, everybody's back, we kick off in January. Hey, it might be helpful for you to reach out to the student by all means. It could be something that might not even need additional follow-up, but you just want to let us know. Like I'm thinking maybe while you are abroad, a student gets news that they have lost a grandparent in their life. And that's something that in the moment can be consoled, throw in a care referral. We will still always reach out, but it might mean that that student is okay. But in that, again, in that particular moment, they're exhibiting a normal response to what they've just received or what they've heard. The way that the care follow-up works, myself, Erin Shea is the chair of our care team. And so she always takes the first look, but then she and I together really look at each referral that comes in and then divvy up the follow-up to a member of our team or in consultation with members of our team. It is regular that Megan and I are speaking, even if in a scenario, because of Megan's role as a clinical provider in the counseling center, she can't answer a lot, but I might need to call and say, I could actually use a consult on this. This is what I'm working with. What do you think? Please know that that is also available to you all before you go, you know, leading up to, while you're there. Don't hesitate to reach out. I mean, we'll be here in Waltham and perhaps some time difference apart, but even in that consult and that collegiality side of things, in my work, I have found that sometimes talking it out with somebody and having that validation and reinforcement of, yes, we've done what we needed to do, or this plan is sound, can also be helpful, you know, as the staff and faculty leaders on that. This QR code goes right to the care referral form. And otherwise you can just Google Bentley care team and it will pop right up on the first window.
Great, thank you. Now over to Kelly.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to give you all just a very quick overview of the conduct that's covered by our gender-based misconduct and Title IX policies. So any type of sexual harassment, sexual assault, which can include any kind of non-consensual touching, but also something as serious as rape, sexual exploitation, dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking, gender discrimination to some degree. Although I think when we're talking about the application of these policies abroad, they generally tend to involve the more serious threats to someone's well-being. So students under our policies are entitled to have their report taken seriously and to be respected in terms of how we respond. They are also entitled to be connected to resources, support, and to be informed of what their reporting options are. Students that are accused of misconduct while they are abroad could be required to leave the program. It will depend on the severity of the incident and what specific factors might be at play in a particular situation. And we do have the right to investigate conduct, much like the student conduct process. We can also investigate allegations of misconduct that take place abroad as well. So while our students are in a student abroad program, faculty and faculty members and Bentley staff have to report any allegations that fall under our gender-based and Title IX policy to the Office of Institutional Equity. So once we receive a report, typically what we will do is reach out to the impacted student and offer an opportunity for them to meet with us, to talk over what their resources might be, what kind of support we can offer while they're abroad or when they return, and talk over what possibilities there are for moving forward with an investigation. An investigation will depend from our office's vantage point on whether or not the individual who has harmed them is one of our students or someone that falls within Bentley's jurisdiction. So all of those factors will really play a role in what kind of support and what sort of resources that we offer. Our policies also are very broad in that they apply to everybody at Bentley. So faculty, staff, students, while people are studying abroad and as well as when they're on campus or locally off campus as well, and also online conduct. All of that is covered by our policies. And it's really up to the reporting party how they want to proceed. And I can say with a lot of confidence that I would say probably 80 to 85% of the students that we meet with are looking for our support, are looking for access to resources like rape crisis counseling or medical support or counseling more than they are looking to move forward with some sort of a formal process. And so because we believe strongly that someone who has experienced some kind of sexual misconduct has already had some agency taken away from them and some choice, we really want to, as much as we can, respect their choices. So if they don't want an investigation or they don't want to move forward with that kind of a process, we will respect that and provide them with whatever support we can. And as I said, often that usually tends to be access to resources and support. So one thing that I would want you all to know while you're abroad is that if a student has experienced some sort of sexual misconduct or relationship violence or anything that's covered by our policy, if you're not sure how to respond or you're not sure how to provide support for them, please reach out to us. We can certainly be helpful in providing resources and support to you as well as to students who have been impacted. So one of the things that I really also want to emphasize is that sometimes students believe that if they hear from us or if they reach out to us, that we will force them to participate in some sort of a process that they don't want any part of. So one of the things that you can be really helpful in is explaining to students, if you are talking to them about something that they've experienced while abroad, that we will not take any type of action steps without their consent. So to help be an ambassador for us in that respect would be really helpful. And I think this is also a really important resource for you all to know about is that in addition to the Office of Institutional Equity, there are resources that are available to students while they are abroad. Pathway to Safety is an organization that will provide resources to students in most of the countries, I believe, that students are traveling to in any of these programs. And also the U.S. Embassy or the consulate can also be really helpful, especially if there has been a crime, and particularly if the crime is not committed by somebody that's one of our students, but maybe somebody that a student has encountered during their visit. They can be really helpful in talking to them about what kinds of legal recourse they might have while they're in that country. So we're very easy to reach. I know that there will be time differences and so forth, but honestly, we're just an email away. If you need support, we're happy to jump on a call. You can email me, and my email's there. Also, Dee Dee Cook is my colleague who is really the person who manages support and resources for folks. She can also be a great resource. And so you can reach out to one or both of us, and we will get back to you as promptly as we can. If you have any questions, let me know. And certainly I'm happy to say that I have yet to have been contacted during any kind of a study abroad process. That's my cat, Dusty, excuse him. So I'm very happy to say that, but you know, just try to just keep this in the back of your mind. If you do have any questions or you're not sure if it's something that would be covered by our office, I'm happy to jump on a call, as I said, and talk you through it.
Thank you. It takes a village, and indeed the village is right here on my screen today. I want to thank everyone and also open up for Q&A. I know this is just a lot of information at once. It seems, I think, sometimes redundant, but I think it also serves a little bit as a refresher, including myself, because there is a lot involved when we travel with students. Any questions, comments? Great, you're just acting like you're students. Thank you.
The only thing I would say is that from my experience, it has been, I have had issues. I've had issues on every single level. I think that one of the important things that we have done has been to have WhatsApp groups that have, if you're working with the tour group, and one without, because it's not the tour organizer's business what's going on with our students in conduct unless it was their business. And I like to be able to talk to you, Sandene, so like a leader one, just having the ability to talk to the leadership if something has to be just said and done. That has been very helpful. And, you know, I always recognize, like when I'm in Japan, I know I'm 13 hours ahead, so I got to be mindful of that. But to communicate early and often, because if I can tell you something's coming down the pike, then you would at least be ready for when I say, and it just happened that we've got a problem.